Residents of Amity Island, your nightmares are just beginning again. Coming to you from Majesco Entertainment, aka those guys who gave you Jaws Unleashed, and Checkpoint Games, comes an autosave screen for Jaws Ultimate Predator on the 3DS. The game was released in late 2011, early 2012, and is also available on the Nintendo Wii. Watch this space as there might be a review for the Nintendo Wii version later on down the track. Both games are different from one another, but they were designed to play like Majesco's earlier title, Jaws Unleashed. Now if that sounds familiar to you, 16-Bit reviewed Jaws Unleashed, and you can find that in the video description below. So how does this game stack up? Let's dive in and find out. Jaws Ultimate Predator puts you in the role of the shark, Jaws. Your goal in this game is to generally eat or destroy things, whether it's people, other fish, or even other sharks. It's going to be either eating things or destroying boats, which have people on it trying to stop you. To mix things up a little, there's even missions where it requires you to chase a boat, or in another case, run away from one. Of course, in both examples, the boat you're chasing as well as the boat that's chasing you will be doing something to try and stop you. On the bottom screen it has some of your abilities, such as the standard bite, a charge sort of attack, turning around and evading. Some of the more complicated moves require you to press some of those buttons in a particular sequence. Regardless, the seafaring men and women from around Amity Island won't have a happy ending. While we're on the topic of happy things, let's go straight on to the good. For one, you get to play as a shark. You can eat people and destroy boats, and there's a somewhat satisfying feeling knowing that those people that were trying to shoot at you and kill you are most likely going to end up in the water, and ultimately in your stomach. I seem to enjoy the fact that Jaws is somewhat of a bullet/harpoon sponge, and with his regenerating health, indicated by how red the screen is, basically he can indefinitely take bullets and harpoons until he completes his mission. I found that the boss fights were also quite fun. They took away from the monotony that was eating things and destroying boats, and provide somewhat of a minor challenge. This one in particular takes place about the halfway to 2/3 point. And while you're swimming around trying to take out the boss, they also do put marine wildlife in for you to eat, so that way if you're hurt you can recover a wee bit of your health. The boss battles ranged in variety from an unusually large squid to a multi-million-dollar submarine, which will ultimately become a waste of taxpayers' money, as well as being somewhat of a mini-boss fight, and ultimately you're up against a US Coast Guard cutter, which you have to take out right at the end. Also had a bit of a hoot with some of the challenge missions as well, such as this one where I've got to sink as many boats as I can within a period of time. Of course, these boats are only able to be destroyed if I use my jumping attack on them. And yes, your eyes weren't deceiving you, that boat just went through a buoy as a result of bad clipping. Speaking of which, here is the bad. The major complaint I have with this game is that missions for the most part are very repetitive. A lot of the missions I've played, out of the 16 that there are in the game, required me to eat X amount of things, or destroy X amount of boats, and that does get really boring after a while. Admittedly, although I found the boss battles to be fun, the regular missions and what you need to do in them are pretty much a dime a dozen. Now while I'm aware that you're playing as a giant shark, and there's only a handful of things a giant shark can really do, at least Jaws Unleashed brought a bit more variety to the playing field. Collision detection also leaves something to be desired. To be fair, I suppose it's handy when it comes to eating people to complete a mission, but in the mission where mines get introduced, you need to perform a specific maneuver to break the chains. You can also get hit by the mine doing so, even though you're clearly under it. In other missions, I've also found that poor collision detection can break the game. Like in this example, I managed to swim out of the playable boundary, and because of that I can't destroy the submarine, and I can't go back into the map because it keeps telling me that I can't leave with enemies in my territory. because of this, I was forced to either die or restart the mission. You would have probably thought they would have done some more testing on it so they could fix game-breaking bugs such as this one. Because to be entirely honest with you, that is incredibly annoying, and being forced to restart a mission, especially if you were very close to destroying a submarine, or very close to finishing the mission in general, can possibly annoy people. Just a little bit. While we're here on this topic, some of the missions do tend to be very vague in what you need to do in order to pass them. So in this one I do know that I've got to destroy the submarine and destroy its armour pieces, but how do I do that? Sometimes the wee message at the bottom of the screen is misleading, so you'll see that it's going to tell me that I should attack the submarine while it's not moving. But if you look at the submarine, it is! And to be fair, it took me about 2 or 3 minutes before I realised that the only way to beat the submarine wasn't by biting it or charging at it, but by charging into it. The problem is here though is that Jaws appears to be stunned after every successful spin on the submarine, which sort of detracts you from trying to do it. I should have probably taken the hint that I wasn't damaged so I could keep doing it, but the problem here though is that it was pretty vague and it should have told me to destroy the submarine by spinning into it in the first place. Instead, all we get is, oh, destroy the submarine, destroy the armour plating. We're not going to tell you how you're going to destroy it, that's something you need to figure out by yourself. But I think I've ranted and raved enough about this game, so now that we have that out of the way, it's time for the ugly. In terms of graphics, taking into account the 3DS's limitations, as well as its small screen size and resolution, I thought Jaws Ultimate Predator didn't do too badly in terms of how well it looked. There were some pretty poor examples, and you're about to see one where the captain runs out of the US Coast Guard cutter and jumps onto the helicopter. Now, of course, you wouldn't really think that this captain's actually going to escape, right? Because I'm sure Jaws has other plans for him, such as, oh, I don't know, eating him. But seeing the helicopter spin out of control, hitting the cutter, and then ultimately causing the cutter to sink, it just looked pretty poor to me. But don't get me wrong, there were some pretty neat things, such as whenever Jaws chomps down on people or fish, it leaves like a patch of blood with bits lying around. Or if you want to be a wee bit more brutal about it, the entire giant squid fight, seeing as you had to rip off a few of the giant squid's tentacles before finally ending its misery. How much, you ask? Well, you'll see Jaws put an end to that squid in just a moment. It's just unfortunate that that squid won't be able to see anymore. Overall, I found Jaws Ultimate Predator on the Nintendo 3DS to be pretty lackluster. It certainly didn't live up to its predecessor, Jaws Unleashed, but it certainly had some shining moments. So on a scale of 1 being a spilt glass of water, and 10 being the Mariana Trench, what would I rate this game? I would probably give this a sewer out of Mariana Trench. The game's shit, but there's some pretty neat things in it. So with that, we finish up Jaws Ultimate Predator. Stay tuned for another journalistic review.